thanks very much for joining us. This is the penultimate session on day 2. We're looking here at decarbonisation and actually the implementation of those decarbonisation and ESG strategies. So we're looking a little bit at both decarbonisation but also social impact. We've got a fantastic panel here. It looks big and broad, and it is in terms of the views, in terms of the expertise that is here. So we have investment, we also have cities, we have regulation, and we've also got a major project. So we'll be able to look at how we're implementing that across cities, within projects, what that means in terms of the investment case. If you don't know me, my name's Richard Betts. I'm the founding partner of Real Asset Media. This is our stand, and it indicates also something which is about us, which is we wish to collaborate with the industry. We write for the industry rather than about the industry, and that is why we also have initiatives like the Senior Housing and Healthcare Association for Europe. But we have a platform called Impact, which writes about and shares initiatives around both social impact but also decarbonisation within the built environment. And Nicole, who is writing this, is the editor, so this will appear also in the Expo Day, but as well as that, it will be written in the Impact Journal. Thank you to also everybody who's joining online and on demand. We'll be picking up these, and if you have any questions, please do ask them. Let's start with brief introductions, and given that there's 6 of us, I do mean brief. So 30 seconds each. Let's start at that end with you, Brett, sorry, yeah.
Thank you, Richard. It's great to be here. My name is Brett Ormrod. I'm the European Net Zero Carbon Lead at LaSalle Investment Management. And it is my responsibility at LaSalle to set decarbonisation strategy across our debt equity platform and really critically implement and deliver against that strategy. Great to be with you.
Great, thank you. Aleksander.
Alek Grabecki. I work for CMS. Is it right?
Yes.
Okay. I work for CMS, based in Warsaw, in Poland. So mostly I do real estate and construction. And sustainability, I look at it from the perspective of green leasing and asset management. I'm also a guest lecturer on Warsaw University of Technology in ESG in construction. So I got some insights from academics, I would say. Happy to be here.
Great. Marie.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Marie Hunt. I'm Head of Research at IPUT Real Estate in Dublin. We own and develop the largest portfolio of prime office and logistics assets in the Irish market. And I would say sustainability is a fundamental part of our strategy as a business.
Great. Vesa.
Good afternoon, everyone. Vesa Palander is my name. I'm the Director for Business and Economic Development of City of Turku in Finland. Turku has been deploying a climate strategy since 2009. We are one of the leading cities in the world, especially in the size class of 300,000-400,000 people.
Great. Elín.
Good afternoon, I'm Elín Guðnadóttir. I work for KADECO, which is a land development company owned by the state, Icelandic state. We develop land around the airport, the international airport, and are delivering the K64 master plan, airport area master plan. And I'm the program director, been taking this project from vision stage and now into the implementation stage.
Great. Shravan.
Hello, Shravan Joshi. I'm one of the elected members at the City of London Corporation, which is the financial district at the very heart of London. I've just finished my term as Chairman of Planning and Transportation, so we look after the entire built environment in the square mile.
Great. Let's pick up a little bit. Brett, I suppose let's start with you, Brett, if we can. From your perspective, let's pick up how you see decarbonisation, how you're seeing that, I suppose, in terms of the evolution of that strategy. Let's start not way back, but let's start with what we've seen over the last, I guess, 12 months, and where you're seeing that from LaSalle's perspective.
I think we've seen almost a resetting or reframing of how we need to consider sustainability and decarbonisation in particular. I think with the political headwinds emanating from the US, as an American-based company, we've had to really focus on, when we talk about sustainability, we talk about value creation and value protection. And this has been a trend that's been happening over the past, I would say, 3 to 5 years, but it has been exasperated. And it's something that we're really focused on. We recently asked our investors at our European Investor Summit how important decarbonisation was to them and sustainability in lieu of this. And it was a resounding, yes, this is very important to our European investor base. So I see this as something that will continue to be very important to our investors. And we will remain laser focused in terms of how we deliver decarbonisation for our clients, in framing it around that value piece critically.
Especially around the value piece. Okay,
Absolutely.
That's interesting. And I'm just going to pick up on some things, and then we'll go relatively quick fire, because I think it's interesting to try and get a really active conversation going and as many views as we can into this space, because it's a good time to be doing that, I think. Shravan, it would be good to pick up from you, I suppose, what you're seeing from a city perspective, collaboration with investors, but also, how do you see the implementation of sustainability, whether that's decarbonisation, but also social impact within planning, within the built environment in London?
Sure. So we have a City Plan 2040, which is going through its cycle of approval right now. And what we've embedded within that are 3 fundamental strands around economic, social, and environmental responsibility. And so every single one of our chapters within the plan has to address those 3 strategic aims. The way we have approached sustainability and decarbonisation is we have taken a pragmatic policy approach. We've worked with industry to put together sustainability SPDs. These are planning documents that allow policy frameworks to then enable the private sector to come and realise projects. So at the heart of it, we're saying retrofit first, but not retrofit only. And we still have redevelopments, major towers going up, where we're looking at the overall life carbon of these buildings and saying, actually, it's not fit for purpose. It's not going to draw the best type of occupants in. It's not got the best net zero operational capabilities. Actually, this is right for redevelopment. And so we've taken a pragmatic approach as a local authority to try and encourage investment, to try and encourage occupiers into the square mile, because we still have an economic responsibility.
Okay, good. And let's pick that up as well in terms of Turku. What are you doing in terms of the implementation of it? And I suppose, how important is it within the structure of the city, and also thinking about the collaboration between investors, other stakeholders?
I think in Turku it's about 3 pillars. It's about data, integration, and then collaboration. So data obviously being, what you measure is what you get. So absolutely need to have verifiable, measurable data on everything. And it has to be presented transparently to all the different stakeholders. So we know real time where we are. So I think that's one of the key things, kind of like a prerequisite for implementing anything. Integration is then obviously all about implementation. So how is it integrated into energy, into planning, into construction, everything we do. And there it goes all the way down to management, leadership. How do you enforce that the goals we set are also followed on practical level? And then, of course, when you talk about city level, it's really all about collaboration. How do you involve the citizens? How do you involve the businesses? So that we can really, really meet those ambitious goals we set.
Okay, good. And Maria, I'd be interested to pick up from you just, I suppose, how are you seeing that in terms of decarbonisation, but also particularly the social strategies?
I think what I would say is that if you're going to, focus on sustainability and be a leader in this space, you can't just focus on the E and the G. They're both really important, but the S is a fundamental part of it as well. And I suppose just picking up on what Shravan was saying, you have social, economic, environmental, but I'd add culture into that as well. And if you get that mix right, you're putting people at the centre of your development. And I suppose from a traditional developer investor, you think about the building and the people within that building. But if you're thinking sustainably, you're thinking beyond the red line and you're looking to the wider community and what you're doing and the impact that's having on the wider community. And I suppose what we're seeing from a fund perspective is if you get all of those ingredients right, you get it back in financial returns at the end of the day, and we're proving that that is the case.
Okay, good. I'm going to come to you, Aleksander and Elín, in a minute, but Brett, let's just pick up a little bit on. We've heard a little bit about data, but actually, how are we delivering it on the ground? So you're setting targets and then delivering it. So what's the process there at LaSalle for how actually you implement these things?
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, as you mentioned, data is fundamental to what we do. It is really the building block. It's how we set our baseline, then measure our performance against our baseline. And we've, over the past 2 years, really got our house in order, or at least tried to, in terms of consumption data. We started our decarbonisation journey a few years ago with a mass audit program that we did. We did over 220 audits by 7 consultants over 3 phases in over 11 countries. Which was, a considerable investment from a time and a capex. But we've seen some really interesting results as a result of the audit program. We're able to really identify capex and opex that we can deploy across the portfolio, and that rolls into how we implement. So we're in the implementation phase now. Which really is based on 4 pillars. We've got optimize, electrify, generate and procure. And yeah, I can get into each of them a little bit more, in a bit more detail, but just at a very high level, I mean, optimize is the most important. It's the low cost, no cost, easy wins. That we are deploying a number of technologies, whether that's, sophisticated BMS AI solutions across the portfolio, all the way down to sort of quite low-tech heating monitoring that monitors, flow and return temperatures in and out of a single logistics asset, and really helps our tenant optimize when the heating is left on overnight, as an example. On the electrify, this is about replacing gas boilers when they come to the end of their service life, and really engaging with our tenants and coming up with these intervention events at the best time to do this. And then generates, that's about deploying renewable energy. And then finally, procuring is ensuring that we can procure, on behalf of our tenants and ourselves, high-quality renewable energy tariffs. And that sort of 4-pronged strategy is continuously evolving, but that is really our framework in terms of how we're implementing decarbonisation at LaSalle. And happy to go into more details on either of those 4.
Okay, great. And we can drill down into some of those. Elín, let's pick up with you. Obviously, you mentioned that it's a large-scale project, so you're having to think about what you're implementing now as an active part of that. So how are you doing that? Is that through data? Is it through setting targets for implementation? What's the strategy behind it? How are you planning to bring that forward?
Well, it's a multifaceted project, so we both have residential and industrial sites. And we are now at the phase of taking the strategy from the sort of the vision stage to implementation. And it's done by collaborating really closely with the municipalities and creating that platform of cooperation. And with that platform of cooperation and building that trust, we are also building the targets and the sustainability standards, which will then be used forward in bringing in investors and finance.
Okay, good. And finance is an interesting point, actually. And Alex, it may be a good time, Alex, just to pick up on, obviously you are based in Poland. But you're looking at financing, of course, as CMS and what's coming through. So what are you seeing in terms of especially green financing, whether that's green leases, green financing, and how is that supporting the implementation of some of these sustainable elements?
Okay, so let me maybe begin answering this question with the famous McKinsey analysis that to achieve the net zero in 2050, the EU will actually need to spend $275 trillion it's exclusively on physical assets. So just check it before this panel, actually, to be precise about that. So it's 275 trillion. It's 275 and 12 zeros. So to actually comprehend what's that, it's if you spend $100 each second, it's like 82,000 years to actually achieve net zero. So if we remember that, we just need to conclude that ESG is a risk assessment layer, actually, to the contracts. So it's a lot of money, and no government, no member states, no EU will be able to actually pay that. So I think with all the discussion about backlash of ESG, or maybe slight return from ESG, we don't actually see it from the investors, from the funds. They treat it as it's something serious because there are figures behind it. It's it's basically the Excel, and they look about that. So in my practice, definitely with the asset financing, it's typical now to see a request form with check boxes, with open interview questions about ESG strategies, ESG compliance solutions, about given asset or portfolio or governance of a single company. So to answer this question from the Polish perspective, but obviously, as you said, in Poland we have mostly international capital. I can see that despite the open discussion, the trend actually shows that ESG is here.
Okay, good. I wanted to pick up a little bit, and then I'm going to come back to you, Shravan, as well. Marie, just explain a little bit about the social initiative and the study that you've been doing in Dublin, because I think that's quite relevant. It's difficult at the moment for us to be able to have, Brett has obviously got those, within the decarbonisation side. It's much easier to have data there to be able to support that, to be able to benchmark it, but much more difficult in terms of social initiatives, certainly in the built environment. But I'd be interested to hear what's happening in the cities around that. But just give us an example of what you're doing in Dublin.
Well, I suppose if you're the $1 million question for ESG is, does it add to the bottom line from an investment perspective? And there's a lot of discussion around green premiums and brown discounts. And when you look at that in the social space,
and it will feel slightly odd, but let's try and keep that stuck there. That's good, yeah.
So the study that we're doing is looking specifically at social value. So if you invest in public realm and placemaking, and you spend money on making places nice for the wider community, the $1 million question for our investor client is, well, what does that add to the bottom line in terms of return for the investor? So we commissioned a piece of research. It's a 5-year longitudinal study. We're into year 4 already, where PRD, GEL of Copenhagen, and Hassel from Australia, working in collaboration with ourselves, tracking 73 different metrics on site of an actual live case development, which is Wilton Park, one of our schemes in Dublin. And it's generating really interesting results, and we hope that by the time we get to year 5, we will have come up with a methodology for how you value social value, and it's something we're willing then to share with the wider industry. But even to date, the results we've had in year 1, year 2, year 3, we've had learnings for ourselves that we've been able to adapt the scheme to make it even better. And I suppose the good news is that we're already seeing signs that we're going to be able to demonstrate the financial benefits of investing in good public realm and good placemaking.
And that's interesting, I think, because as soon as there's a demonstration of value, both social value, but actually if there's a demonstration that there is financial value attached to that as well, that can be a real changer, I think, in terms of how that moves forward. And Shravan, just from your sense, how do you see that? Because it is difficult to measure social value, but obviously it's critical for city attractiveness.
Absolutely, it is. And I'll go back in time a little bit. It was sort of post-pandemic reaction. We're all working from home. The square mile has 670,000 workers, but only 8,000 residents. And so for us, the place-based economy is absolutely vital. And so we had to work really hard to make sure we had a destination that people came back to. And we formed a policy called Destination City to really create the ecosystem you need to draw people back, to draw the talent back into that dense urban working environment. We did that through a series of activation policies around how we activate the ground floor realm, how we bring experiential culture and social impact into people's lives, how you create a more inclusive environment within offices. So actually getting rid of that sort of fortress-style office where you go in and you're immediately confronted with security, actually opening up these areas to art, to culture, to allow children and families to explore and discover these spaces as well. And so those have been fed into our planning policies. And so when we have schemes that are coming through now, they have to demonstrate a cultural, social impact within that scheme, within the red line of that scheme. And so we've done that through policy generation, but the pounds and pence argument does come into play because those anchor tenants that then occupy those buildings want that for their workers. We're not talking about workers that necessarily have no choice of where they work. The sort of talent we're attracting could go to New York, Tokyo, Singapore, Hong Kong. We want them to come to the City of London.
Or indeed Turku.
Or indeed Turku, or, absolutely. So we've got to make sure we're creating those environments that draw that talent in. And so that dense urban environment you create has to create that talent intensification as well. And by creating that social network, you actually intensify that even further.
Great. And from your side, how do you see that social side playing into the attractiveness in terms of investment? Do you see a payback from that?
Absolutely. I think it's crucial. And I mean, the whole nature, biodiversity, all the climate actions we take, I mean, they have to be something the citizens feel every day. That's definitely the well-being of them. There is absolutely an element of competitiveness, attractiveness as well. And I think that's something we start, as City of Turku, we start communicating actually much more aggressively as well. We have taken the first steps. We have the, great proof of impact already. So now it's really how do you really turn it into something more tangible. I mean, you mentioned the financial element. I'm myself thinking about it very much from the overall economic impact perspective. We might be setting strict regulations, for example, for certain industries. But if we empower them at the same time, so we might be developing a competitive advantage for the industries we have in the region, which is then adding on again, on the overall attractiveness of the city. So multiple different angles, and it's really hard to. You might feel that the European Union is regulating too much. And you might not be completely wrong about it, but it's always 1 + 1 is 3 if you do it properly. And we need to take the right angles of all these different elements and then utilize the tools, the means we have, and then build something.
Okay, good. Brett, I'd be interested to get from you, I guess, there's a discussion here about the cities definitely seeing value in terms of it attracting investment. How do you see that? And I'd be interested to get your view as well, Marie, on this particular one, which is, how do you see that? Do you see decarbonisation, the sort of sustainability ones, leading from your perspective as investors to a more attractive, more resilient investment? Are you looking at cities in that way? Do you see this as accretive? Do you see it as adding value to your investment side?
Absolutely. We wouldn't be doing it if we didn't see it that way. We have good relationships with many of the cities that have major refurbishment or new development projects. One being here in Munich, London, absolutely. We've got One Exchange Square that we're about to complete that we're very, very proud of, where we looked at operational and embodied carbon. And from a sustainability perspective, a net zero carbon perspective, it's it's going to be a flagship building in the city, and our investors are very happy. It's proving to be equally as good from an investment perspective as well. And then we have a large refurbishment project in Paris that we've been working very closely with the city called Bergère. It's a large office redevelopment, a major refurbishment of a historical big Parisian office block. And yes, sustainability and decarbonisation is absolutely critical to the delivery of this. And our investors are very keen that this is integrated into our process. They see it as our fiduciary duty to be able to do this. And we are very focused on how we can link this to value. And yes, I've got multiple examples within the portfolio, either on the development side or on the standing portfolio, where we've been able to do that successfully. Sometimes that link isn't always, cause and effect. There's a bit of muddling, murkiness in the water, as it were, in terms of how you attribute this. But yes, we definitely see this as something that our investors are asking for, and our tenants, I should say, as well. Here in Munich, we are looking at signing a lease for the Munich's first hybrid timber office building, and we're seeing rents 20-25% over and above what is commonplace in that area because of the sustainability credentials of the building.
I think we have the exact same experience, and I think obviously there's been some pushback about ESG from the US primarily over the last while, but it hasn't dampened our resolve, because in the exact same way our occupiers are asking for it, our investors are demanding it, we're seeing the financial benefits, our schemes are letting quicker. And we had an example last year where we launched a logistics sub-fund, and one of the key investors into that fund only invested because it was an Article 9 fund. So, and I suppose from a fundraising perspective as well, it's, we're not going to backtrack on this. We really see it as future-proofing our portfolio.
Okay, good. I want to pick up a little bit on the implementation of these. Oh, sorry, Alex, did you want to?
Yeah, just wanted to add one thing, actually. That I think we need to remember that all of the new buildings will need to be zero emission in 2030, right? So, it's from my perspective, it's one lease cycle away. It's like in 5 years. So, it's basically implementing ESG in your asset management or green leasing, so what I do, but also in construction of the building, like in the capex of the building, it's making the asset prepared for what seems to be inevitable in 5 years, right? And the other thing is that 80% of the existing buildings will still be with us in 2050. So in 25 years, 80% of the existing buildings are with us, right? So it's just not enough of the office, logistics, hotel assets to do well without retrofit. So from this perspective, I think what just said, it's a must.
Yeah, and I think the transformation piece, especially when you're looking at cities, has to be key, because I think for London, it's about every 100 years that virtually the stock all changes, which is an interesting thing. I want to pick up a little bit about the implementation. So what does it mean from a project basis? You mentioned there embedded carbon. How do we solve some of those things? So what does it mean for you on a project basis? Does it mean green steel? Does it mean renewable energy for everything? What are you looking at? Is it biodiversity? Are you considering all of those aspects? So let's start with you, Elín, on that. And then I'd like to hear other people's perspectives on how we're actually implementing that.
Yeah, good that you mentioned that, because I think the sustainability factors, environment, social and economic, they are all, placed, localized. So it's a way of actually addressing things that matter to the locality where the action is taking place. And in Iceland, for example, we have almost 100% renewable energy in our grid. So talking about decarbonization is a very different conversation. In terms of addressing things that the actually locality needs from the placemaking, I look at the sustainability discussion as like a platform to do that and create those values that are necessary, whether they're social, economic, or environmental. And in terms of the environmental, And just because we are talking about cities and places, climate change and mitigation and adaptation is a big factor now, I think. And I think that's something that we all need to be addressing.
Okay, good. Shravan, yeah.
Yeah, if I go back to 2019, in the City of London, only about 8% of our schemes that were approved were retrofit schemes. Last year, 2024, that was 54%. So we've seen a huge change in the way that the policies that we have driven forward new projects to come to life. And of course, One Exchange Square is a brilliant scheme. It's also in my ward, which is great. But what I will say is that the retrofit schemes that we've approved are only now coming through to completion and fruition. And so our calculation and our sort of quantification of the carbon impact of retrofit is something we are still learning about. And we've seen huge challenges in that construction phase for retrofit where factors like noise, dust, impact on the local environment are something that we have just not known about. And so there is a learning curve here, and I think local authorities need to be aware of that and probably a little bit forgiving as these projects come through to say, look, there's some latitude needed here before we can truly quantify the benefits of retrofit and where the benefits are and where there aren't. So we're doing a whole piece on circular economy now, but it's very clear that there are bits of circular economy that do add to the lowering of carbon impacts. There are bits that don't, and we need to be careful about where we draw that line.
And that is therefore, seems to me, that's about collaboration, learning from one another, because especially, whether it's a complex scheme like yours, a complex project, cities by their very nature are complex, and as are these transformations, I think, are also, a complex part of it. Brett, just quickly on embodied carbon versus operational carbon, given that was in the same ward, let's pick up that project and just give us a slight sense of what you were looking at in terms of the operational, in terms of the embodied carbon, and how you saw those and dealt with it.
Absolutely. So, part of something that we've welcomed at LaSalle, and I think the industry at large, has been looking at whole life carbon, as Shravan mentioned, embodied versus operational. And on One Exchange Square, it had great bones as a building. The floor to ceiling heights were great. The grid structure was great. So we could really keep a lot of the existing steel and concrete on the building. We actually saved the equivalent amount of steel as half the Eiffel Tower used. So that's how much steel we've actually saved within the building. And just to get a little bit into the data, we've been able to prove out our final embodied carbon number for upfront embodied carbon being around about the 480 mark of kilograms of CO2 per square meter, which for a building of that size in the City of London we were very happy with the result, I should say. And we've married that up with a very ambitious operational carbon story as well, where we're targeting Neighbours 5-star, which is looking at not just how you plan for modeled energy consumption, as there's been a shift in the industry again from setting a modeled operational number to actually measuring in-use performance. So part of the certification means that we're going to be assessed 1 year into performance to ensure that the number that we targeted we're actually hitting. And the building is fully electric, no fossil fuels, and we're going to be working with our incoming tenants. Again, another key part of the neighbour certification is to ensure that there's great alignment. And that's been included in some of the leases. They need to hit a certain energy use intensity benchmark number, which really ties it all together then from the embodied carbon phase that we focused really hard on reusing as much of the existing building as possible out into operation and when it's being leased up and into the green lease requirements as well. So it's a building that we're immensely proud of.
Great. Maria.
No, I was just going to add to that to say it's absolutely critical that you have good relationship and a good working relationship with the occupiers of the buildings, because you can deliver the most sustainable buildings with all of these amazing features, but if you don't share data and work collaboratively with the occupier to make sure they're using it correctly, you're not going to achieve the best results or the optimum results. So collaboration, much more so than happened in the past, is absolutely necessary.
And
This is where the green lease comes in, actually. So I'm a great advocate of that. So let me just to add in 1 minute a comment that it works well in exactly that kind of relationship you described, because it's like the opposite of the typical binary transaction, which would be a sale of a building, for example. And for those long-lasting relationship, when you need to actually share data to firstly measure it, then share, be trustworthy about it. There is a lot of sensitive information there, and actually work together to achieve something, with single or multi-tenant, multi-occupier building. You need a platform actually to work it around, and this is why I support this idea so much.
Okay, great. Vesa, it would be good to get from your view as well, in terms of the collaboration there that we've been talking about. How does that work with particularly the investment community? And I know that you've been involved in the public sector really only for 18 months, and before that were an entrepreneur, so you've seen both sides of it. I suppose, how is that collaboration, and are there things that you find challenging or the cities find challenging in terms of working with investors and vice versa, and are there ways we can help solve that between us?
I think there is probably like a natural challenge actually when a city works with investors, but I think what's been really working well for us is the I would say political consensus on the importance of climate strategy. It's been implemented since 2009. We have multiple city councils, changed recently in April, but we see absolutely no change in the way we approach the climate strategy. So all the major parties are fully backing it up. So this building credibility, so predictability as well. So it creates this sort of like a basis for real collaboration discussions with investors or businesses alike. So when the agenda is clear, we have already shown in practice, we have implemented multiple different projects successfully. We talk about those, we share the practices, best practices, and that's definitely paving the way for even more fruitful cooperation with investors.
And there's been a bigger focus, certainly over the last year, in terms of biodiversity. For example, some of the real estate investors also going to the biodiversity COP rather than just the usual COP. Certainly looking at it from a city perspective, a lot happening in Asia if you look towards Singapore or those kinds of areas where greenery is also used for cooling actively in the cities. How are you seeing that? Is it a challenge to get that into the square mile? What's your sense of that and what can be achieved?
Yeah, look, it is a huge challenge. I mean, we are the square mile because we are 1 square mile. We can't go outwards. We can only go upwards. And finding those areas of solace, of greenery, is a huge challenge. What we have done is we started a Healthy Streets plan, which looks at how we can pedestrianize, lower vehicular traffic, and therefore increase the public realm through that kind of strategy. And within that, we can do some urban greening. We can build some pocket parks around that provide that sort of respite. One of the biggest challenges we have, and we've seen this over the last few years, is the intense summers. And actually using trees and using that sort of urban cooling is something that we're really, really keen to promote. We have urban cooling factors that now allow us to monitor and measure the impact of greenery in those urban environments. And of course, there's a biodiversity angle to that as well. Introducing new pollinators into our environment is critical. We've seen a huge issue with the sort of diversity of pollinators in London, in the southeast. And so if we can do our bit, we are achieving a lot of that through rooftops, green rooftops, that are not necessarily open to humans. So we're actually saying leave the rooftops to be a bit of a wilding area and use it for that biodiversity factor rather than just having it for your occupants or your visitors to go and experience. So we're doing a number of things as much as we can.
Yeah, because the practical level of climate adaptation is important as well. Yeah.
Yeah, to just pick up on that, because I think adapting this early on in the project is really important, and we've come across blue-green solutions, porous parking spaces and areas which can actually, flood, and also using the houses to stop wind from a different direction, to actually use the built environment as well in your favor is what we're seeing working very well.
Okay, great. We've got about 3 minutes left, so I'm just going to ask, which actually gives you around 30 seconds each, probably, which seems a harsh amount of time, I know. But let's pick up what would we like to achieve by next year, either within our businesses or where this discussion might have got to if we have it again next year. Where will we be? What should we be talking about? Where will we have moved on to? So it could be a goal. It could be whatever it is. But let's start with you, Shravan, in terms of...
Sure. So we're running a circular economy pilot at the moment for 12 months. It's called Project Romulus, and it enables us to be the data owner as the corporation, but to collect passporting and materials data from across the construction sector. That allows us to actually monitor the actual life cycle of material rather than just the design life of a building. So to say a piece of steel could have a 250-year design life and therefore a carbon life of 250 years is much better than having a design life of 60 years, which might be the design life of that in that particular building. That's one piece. The other piece is skills and resources. One of the biggest challenges we've got is getting the next generation skilled and resourced to actually take over this industry and actually implement some of these policies. And so we started a skills hub. We've got about 400 firms signed up to it to do apprenticeships and to just tool up the next generation. If we can achieve some of that, that'd be great.
Great, very good. A good set of things. Elín.
Yeah, can I just copy that? No. No, I think we'll continue to do what we are doing, which is basically creating that sort of platform of cooperation and trust between different stakeholders to gather around, shared values and continue looking at sort of the future placemaking, incorporating sustainability factors. In next year, I would like to hear more about adaptation and the built environment and buildings.
Okay, great. Yeah.
I'm using ruthless execution actually multiple times per day in my work, and that's basically what we need to be seeing in the climate area everywhere. Regarding Turku, we have the ambitious goal of being carbon neutral by 2029. So we're taking decisive steps further during the next 12 months. We are around 75% at the moment. So ruthless execution on all the fronts.
Okay, ruthless execution. Very good. Marie.
I think for me it's broadening the conversation about social value, because I think a lot of firms are keen to do it but are nervous that it's a really big thing, but in actual fact they're probably doing it already in some shape or form. So in order to get into this space you've got to take that first step. So I'd like to hear more about social value and spread that word, how important that is.
Okay, good. So we will try to do that in the Impact Journal for certain. That's a mental note for us. Alex.
Yeah, I'd like to see two things, actually. First one is that we see more and more green lease clauses on the market. And basically, these are landlords driven because this comes down from the investment funds. So it's all fine, but I'd like to see more serious discussion about how cost savings and cost optimization of the operational carbon footprint translates into the rents. So more open discussion about that. And the other one is use of the digital tools and AI in ESG themed schemes. So what I'm talking about is basically seeing more designs in BIM, building information modeling, which allows you to predict some of the business decision on the stage when the building is not erected or the office is not fitted, and these business decisions are actually optimized before you have the chance to take them. So yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Brett.
Thanks. No pressure wrapping this up. I think for me it's about greater standardization of sustainability key performance indicators. There are too many ways to measure sustainability and decarbonisation. We need a fundamental set of 5 or 10 that we can use across the industry, because that will lead for greater transparency and better and more informed decision making. And then second, I think this was maybe stealing one of yours, implementation and delivery. We need to build a bank of case studies to demonstrate how easy it is to deliver this, particularly on the standing portfolio. Yes, you wrap this up into the development case study, but for standing assets, decarbonisation needs to be proved out, and the value of decarbonisation as well. We believe at LaSalle we're delivering it, but we need the greater industry and the industry at large to be able to do it as well with us. And there are many case studies of those who are doing it, but it'd be great to have more.
Great. And just out of interest, had you met before, Shravan? And no, well, probably not. Well,
Maybe in a conference somewhere.
in the interests of collaboration and saying that I was collaborative, I'm going to take you both out for lunch in London. So that's my promise for it. Good. Thanks very much to everybody watching online, and if you've been watching it on demand, thank you very much for watching.